In the late 1400s, a golden age of discovery had begun, pioneered by Spanish and Portuguese sailors. During this period, there are three famous expeditions that need to be mentioned. That is Bartolomé Dias, the first Portuguese navigator to cross the southernmost point of Africa. Next, Christopher Columbus of Spain discovers America. Finally was Vasco da Gama of Portugal, the first to go directly from Europe to India. These voyages opened up shipping trade routes extended from Europe to Asia. Whoever controls these trade routes will become super rich, because they found something that can't be found in Europe, which is spice. It is used for seasoning, preserve food, and increase libido. So when imported to Europe, it becomes a hot commodity and is priced in gold. It is the imported goods that bring great value and super profit, which has attracted many explorers. The Europeans have discovered the shape of the world in the east, but the ocean behind the New World is completely obscure. One day in 1517, our protagonist, the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan, is sadly leaving his homeland to cross the border to Spain. The reason was that he failed to convince the King of Portugal to invest in an expedition across the New World, because he thinks the world is spherical. In the West, when we cross the Atlantic Ocean and the Americas, we will find Asia again. The king did not believe him, so he sent his guards to throw him away. So he presented himself to the King of Spain and Holy Roman Emperor, who was also a direct competitor of Portugal in maritime expeditions. Since most of the routes from Europe to Asia were controlled by Portugal, Spain's only option was to find another new route. Under the investment of the King of Spain, an expedition led by Magellan consisting of 5 ships and 270 sailors was established. The supplies include nearly 2 tons of biscuits, 5 tons of salt pork, 200 barrels of wine, and 7 cows to feed for fresh milk and then for meat, and ship repair equipment, fishing gear, and 58 cannons and guns of all kinds. Officially departed on September 20th, 1519. Magellan was now considered a traitor by the Portuguese and wanted everywhere for agreeing to naturalize Spain and join the Spanish expedition. So the Portuguese fleets pursued him aggressively to stop the expedition. Magellan first stopped in 2 archipelagos, Canary and Cape Verde. After escaping the Portuguese fleet, next was the stormy Atlantic crossing that lasted for months. Where they landed is now Brazil. Magellan used fishing hooks and carts to trade with the Aboriginal people in exchange for food and water. At the same time, the sailors were also fascinated by hot local women, causing the next trip to be delayed for many more months. It was not until the following year, February 1520. The sailors decided to continue south, stopping at Porto San Julian, now is Argentina, to avoid a blizzard, because the weather here is extremely harsh and food running out. The Spanish sailors began to rebel because they could not stand a Portuguese like Magellan as captain. The rebellion was quickly quelled by the execution of its leaders. In August 1520, one ship was sunk by a big storm. Fortunately, all the crew were saved. Another ship, because of the loss of contact, fled to Spain. Regardless of the loss, Magellan still steered the ship forward. After violent storms, they successfully crossed the 350-mile-long strait, now in the southern parts of Argentina and Chile. When going to the big sea, a calm sea gives a very peaceful feeling. So Magellan happily named it the Pacific Ocean. The fleet never thought that the new ocean would be so vast. It is also difficult to find an island to repair ships and replenish food. During 98 days at sea, the food on the ships ran out. The sailors were forced to eat rats and wood, drink urine to survive. This time up to 19 people died of hunger and disease. Fortunately, on the 99th day, they finally found a small archipelago. The Aboriginal people here did not chase them away but also welcomed them enthusiastically, giving the whole crew a well rest and a hearty meal. However, the Aboriginal people here have never left the island in their whole life, and suddenly met a group of tourists in strange costumes who drove giant ships to their island. Of course, curiosity was inevitable. One day, some Aboriginal guys arbitrarily stole a few items on Magellan's ship as a souvenir, unexpectedly being discovered by Magellan.
Hi amigo. I think this potty is so weird. Can be drained and cleaned at the same time. It's great for cooking.
Infuriated, he shot and killed 7 Aboriginal people and burned 40 thatched houses as punishment. Magellan left the islands and gave it a scornful name. The Mariana Islands, in Spanish, means Islands of Thieves. In March 1521, his ship docked in a random archipelago of the Philippines. Incidentally, there was a young Malay slave in Magellan's ship. He immediately recognized the familiar language of the natives, officially confirming that Magellan's fleet crossed the Pacific Ocean, successfully landed in the Far East. It also directly proves that the Earth is a sphere, and we can completely go around it. Magellan planted flags in neighboring regions to claim territory, marking the period of Spanish colonial rule in the Philippines. To establish his colony, Magellan endeavored to evangelize the natives, baptizing thousands of believers. On April 27, 1521, to expand the territory, he brought 60 sailors fully equipped with armor and weapons to attack a tribe of 1,000 natives living there. Unexpectedly overwhelmed in numbers, Magellan unfortunately died in a foreign land, at the age of 41. After Magellan's death, his assistant Juan Sebastián Elcano, a Castilian navigator, who participated in the rebellion against Magellan while the crew was stranded in South America, now takes over as captain. The fleet had only 2 ships and 110 sailors left, but the expedition still had to go on. In November 1521, they landed on the Moluccas Islands, also known as the Spice Islands, now as Indonesia. In this place, they found spices, nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon. They bought out the goods and stored them on the ships. When they were preparing for a long voyage back to Spain, one ship was badly damaged and had to stay behind for repairs. Elcano decided to divide the fleet into 2 teams. Team 1 consisted of 50 men who stayed to repair the ship, and then followed the old route to depart from the east across the Pacific Ocean back to Spain. The second team, consisting of about 60 people, led by Elcano himself, continued to depart westward across the Indian Ocean to Spain. At this time in India there were quite a few colonies of Portugal, so Elcano couldn't dock inland to buy food. Had to go a 9-week circuit to escape the hunt of the Portuguese warships. The number of sailors on board was reduced to 35 due to death from malnutrition. About the situation of the first team, having finished repairing the ship, left the Spice Islands and headed east, but halfway through, they encountered a strong storm and disease, so they were forced to return to the Spice Islands. When they returned, they realized that the islands had entered the sphere of Portuguese power, so the ship was sunk and all the crew was captured. Returning to the predicament of the Elcano team, the ship stopped at the Cape of Good Hope. Apart from the beautiful scenery, there was nothing here, so it had to continue moving. Because the ship halfway through was badly damaged, it was impossible not to stop at an archipelago of Portuguese territory for repair. 13 sailors were found out and captured by the Portuguese guards while trying to use spices in exchange for food. And Elcano also abandoned them and quickly fell out of here before it was too late. On September 8, 1522, almost 3 years after the departure, Elcano and the 17 remaining men on ship finally returned to Spain in extreme exhaustion. 270 went and only 18 returned, but they completed the first circumnavigation of the world in human history. According to estimates, the ships of Magellan and Elcano have traveled a total of 81,449 kilometers, which is equal to the period of 2 revolutions of the Earth. With 26 tons of spice on the market and selling like hotcakes, it not only compensates for the cost of exploration but also brings huge profits. In addition, it also laid the foundation for Spain to become a hegemony on the sea in the 17th century, considered the first empire on which the sun that never sets in history. 3 years after the expedition, Elcano became addicted to adventure again, once again asked the king to invest in an expedition in East India, but this trip was not as lucky as the last time. He ended up malnourished and died of illness in the Pacific. Through the extraordinary expedition of the fleet of Magellan and Elcano, many new sea routes opened up, increased cultural and commercial exchanges between the two east and west, and proved the spherical Earth theory, through which provides a comprehensive view of the shape of the world.